Woman Magazine. I'm your host, Wendy Brawley, and I'm joined by these two lovely ladies. Donna, thank you for coming back. We missed you. I'm glad you're feeling better.
To be back. Thank you.
And Jessica, thank you for being here as always.
Always a
And
pleasure.
Kelly's out today, but we are hoping that her father's doing better and that she'll be back with us soon. Well, y'all, have you heard about all these flying objects over the entire country and in other parts of the world? Spying objects flying over our airspace? I'm telling you, it's frightening to me. What do you think? What's going on?
The audacity of it all.
Yeah, really.
I mean, and what are we going to do about it? I mean,
Yeah,
we
that's a good
just
question.
go ahead and spy on us. Like, can we do it back? I mean, is something going to happen? Or do we know who it is? Which
Well, they said it was China.
It
didn't
is China.
I
Well, I had no doubt that that thing wouldn't make it past South Carolina if it came across us.
Well, yeah,
And
it
sure enough.
got shot down. North Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, well, Surfside, but yeah, you knew that was gonna happen. And we were discussing a little bit earlier that I had seen it over my house that day
Really?
around noon, and you know, I don't live far from Fort Jackson, so that was like,
covered over there.
here.
Yeah.
It really did kind of hang around
Yeah,
that
covered
area,
over there.
and then it drifted off towards the coast. But just like, it really makes you wonder what kind of information are they gathering, and
They finally started shooting. They shot it down, but then, you know, more of them in different parts of America's territories were being shot down over the next several
I
days.
just can't believe that they have the audacity to do that and then, you know, and ask for the machines back or something.
Yeah,
I just
that's
can't believe it.
it's bold.
But you know, the weird thing about it, and I mean, I always thought that if you flew over another country's airspace, that was an automatic,
Act of war.
pretty much, and automatically it was going to be shot down, and it would be considered an act of aggression, and in some instances, like you said, an act of war. And here, this thing flew over the entire country. I mean, and what scared me, or what concerned me, I don't want to say I'm scared, but I was. But what concerns me is, what were they doing? I mean, some people say that they're spying up. They could be dropping stuff or putting stuff in the atmosphere. I mean, it's really scary to think that other countries could come, other unfriendly countries could come into our airspace, stay there for days, travel across the entire country, particularly making note of our military installations.
Right.
Before they're shot down. That I don't, Republican or Democrat, I don't think that matters. You know, at the end of the day, when stuff like this happen, everybody needs to be concerned.
You know, what shocks me is that they can gather a lot of information by the apps we use. A lot of the free apps has spy technology, and that, you know, maybe is it biological warfare or what is it? Like, what do you want to know?
Well, I think, you know, that's the big question. You know, what is it? What was the purpose of it? And how are we going to be impacted? Because you're right. I mean, TikTok, they said that's nothing but spyware. And so they know a lot about us as a country, as individual people. But like I said, what was concerning about this is that they flew over all of pretty much our military installations, and you know, South Carolina has many, and over where our weapons are stored at, and ballistic missiles are stored. So it was scary. It was just scary stuff.
It was, and I heard the jet. It just was a loud roar. It was flying very low, and it had only been 3 or 4 minutes, and then I was watching live on TV, and then
Boom.
boom. So I was like, I wonder if that's the jet that just flew over my house.
Yeah, scary stuff. Scary stuff.
Anyway, we're going to move on to our first subject of our discussion today, which is putting a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would allow public school money to go to private schools in South Carolina. So just wanted to see.
I am not a fan. And you knew this, right?
I knew.
You knew this. I mean, come on, y'all. The public schools have not been fully funded in South Carolina since 2008. And I know this for a fact. And that was when we had a serious recession. And ever since that time, the base student cost, which was what we used to go by, has never gotten the full funding from the state of South Carolina. Now to the tune of some $600 million. And at some point in time, we have to accept that, there is a discernible difference in our school systems based upon taxes. And if you live in a county where there's no real tax base, then what you're telling those people in those public schools is, oh, you were going to take even more of your money and we're going to give it to a private school. And by the way, you can go to the private school, but you really can't, because if you have a kid that has an individual education plan, an IEP, they're not taking those kids. If your child doesn't have transportation to get there back and forth every day, there's no bus coming to pick you up for the private school. So it's really not fair, and we really ought to be investing that money in public schools.
Well, but for students that are in, I see both sides of it.
Yeah.
But the other side of that argument is for students that are in failing schools. I understand your point to taking those dollars doesn't help those schools in their recovery and to do better. The other point I said, I don't know how many folks out there have been pricing private schools versus public schools, but it's a significant difference. And as you pointed out, they don't have transportation. You're not getting on a school bus.
And going to a private school. And this term failing schools, that ought to say it all. Why are these schools failing? They are failing because they have inadequate resources. They don't have teachers that the kids quality teachers that the kids can understand. They don't have the ability to attract those quality teachers because the pay is so low, and they don't have the kind of funds that other districts might have that have lots of industry in their community. Listen, it's just no real justification to say a school is failing. We should be ashamed to use that term for a public school, because no public school should be failing in South Carolina.
I know, like, as a mother, I have noticed differences between let's say the education that my kids have received as opposed to other counties where they're underserved. And I mean, I hate to say it, but if I lived in those counties, I would want to put my child in a private school. Some kids they can't even write proper English. They can't even have, not to say an intelligent conversation, but they're just not able to, be on the grade level that they're on. They're really behind. And so I understand what you're saying. I mean, it is sad, but there's differences in the education, just even conversation. I went to one school for my old job, and I worked for a Medicaid healthcare program, and we donated pencils, and those kids were like so grateful, and they were so amazed because some of them didn't have any pencils. They didn't have like basic educational necessities.
And that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. That you have this disparity in the public school system because they're not funding the schools at the level that it should be. It should not make any difference if I live in Richland County that might be industry rich versus living in Allendale, which doesn't have the kind of industry. But that's what drives the tax base. And now you're talking about taking more of that money, what little money sometimes these people get, and directing them into private schools. And by the way, your kid ain't gonna be able to go anyway because they don't have the transportation. They may need special assistance, and the private schools have applications that basically say we get to choose who we take. Public schools don't. So I just think it's a bad idea. Before we experiment with taking the resources away, we ought to at least fully fund it.
But why isn't it fully funded now? That's what I'm not.
Because it has never been fully funded since 2008. They have never done it. And I have stood on the House floor and said that many, many times. I know we're out of time, but this is a conversation that we're going to be talking about a lot, because they're going to probably push that constitutional amendment on the ballot, and people are going to have to make a choice. So listen, stay with us. We will be right back.
Part-time job, full-time hustle, all-time Shiro to all of us. It's time for you, our Shiro, to stretch for the stars. A free online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back. We are delighted to have with us Senator Mia McLeod. For those of you who may not be familiar with her, she is a two-time elected senator for representing Richland and Kershaw counties. Just have done an amazing job, and I'm going to tell you, you created quite a stir back in January when you announced that you were leaving the Democratic Party. And you know, you're a rising star in the party. There's no question about it. I mean, you are a rising star. So, you know, tell us a little bit about what prompted that decision.
Well, a lot prompted that decision. A whole lot. I was just getting more and more exhausted with the party, because the party's gotten away from the people. And over the 12 years that I served between the House and the Senate, I discovered that all too often I had to fight my own party just to help my own people. And that was so disheartening for me. But when I finally made the decision to announce it, it wasn't a hard decision to make. It was the right decision.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably one of the best political decisions I've made, because I've always operated as an independent. But, you know, I ran under the Democratic Party label, and I have served with some amazing Democrats, and I've served with, I voted for some amazing Democrats and Republicans. And in the past, before everything got so partisan, there was a clear difference, in my opinion, between the parties. And I've never been a party person. I've always been taught to vote for the person. Whose vision and values are in alignment with mine. And I continue to do that, but it was so frustrating to have to feel like I had to fight my own party just to do right by the people. And so when I announced my run for governor in 2021, I had no idea that I would be, or I was, the first Black woman to ever run for governor in our state. And to think that the party missed or forfeited that opportunity to really, you know, they always talk about celebrating the fact that Black women in particular are the backbone of the party. But when I ran, I got everything but support, and you know, the party just didn't do what the party was supposed to do. And so a lot of times people are not as informed as I would like for them to be about what the party's responsibilities are.
And I think that's an important point.
Yeah. So, you know, and the party tried to spin it and say, oh, well, she wanted us to endorse her, she wanted us to support her, and I didn't. I wanted them to do their job.
Wow.
And that was to, you know, make sure that people knew who the candidates were. I wasn't the only woman running. For the first time in our history, we had 4 Black women running statewide, and that's something to be celebrated and publicized. You know, that would have energized our base like never before. But the party did the opposite. They did nothing to let people know who was running, what the candidates were about, you know, what our platforms were about. For those of us who had voting records in my race, I was the only one who had a voting record. At the state level, and my opponent ran for Congress once and got elected and couldn't get reelected. But you know, the party did a total disservice to the people by not sharing who we were and, you know, what we were about. And that's all I wanted them to do. And to also let people know when the primary was.
Exactly.
Yeah, I went to...
Give us a date.
Yeah, exactly. I went to Brooklyn Baptist a couple of weeks before the election, before the primary. And I will never forget walking into the banquet hall after church, after worshiping at Brooklyn Baptist in West Columbia. And I walked over to the table where a black woman was seated. She was having lunch, and I introduced myself to her and just told her, you know, hi, I'm Senator Mia McLeod. I'm running for governor of South Carolina. And she looked up at me and she's like, wait, what? She said, you're running for what? I said, I'm running for governor of South Carolina. She said, when? I said, now.
Now.
She said, nobody told me. She said, why didn't the party tell me? She said, they always send me information about who's running. She said, I already voted. I voted early and I didn't know. She said, I didn't even vote in the governor's race because I didn't know any of the people. I didn't think I knew anybody on the ballot.
Well, Senator McLeod, I just have to say that you are so courageous. I really look up to you for, you know, it takes a lot of courage to do that, to walk away from like the way that you did. You know, last show we talked about the lack of support from the Party for Black Women Seeking Office, and I think you were kind of like discussing, I mean, it seems like it was kind of like a problem for you in your race for governor.
Right. It was. And that is the only distinction that I could make. You know, this was the first time that I had run for a statewide office, of course, and it was the first time a black woman had run for governor in our state, but it was also the first time that we had a black woman running for Secretary of State. We had a black woman running for U.S. Senate. Well, actually in the primary, 2 black women running for the United States Senate, and the party did nothing to publicize that, did nothing to share with voters who we were, what we were about, and you know, that just, it hurts. It really hurts to think about all of the time and energy and effort that so many black women and men have put into the party, my parents included. And to not get anything back. I mean, to watch people who wanted to vote and wanted to be engaged and wanted to know who they should align themselves with based on the issues, they didn't have that opportunity because the party did nothing to publicize that there was a primary. And of course, you know, we didn't have a televised debate before early voting. We barely had I won't even call it a debate, but we had a question and answer session at SCE TV. And that was by design.
Oh no, wasn't that really late in the process too?
It was the Friday before.
I thought it was
primary.
a Friday, yeah.
Yeah, strategically after early voting closed, like at 5 o'clock when early voting.
The thing I noticed too is that there weren't regional forums. I mean, where candidates, without regard to the party saying we like this one or that one, just forums that allowed you to, any candidate that was seeking office, to go into a community. The party should set those things up in each region of the state so that candidates can introduce themselves. That's the party apparatus that should be in place. But I don't know, the party dropped the ball on that and paid a dear price in November. It didn't just stop in June. It really manifested itself in November.
Right, it really did. I mean, I was floored when I learned that we lost 5 more black legislators in the South Carolina House, and now as a result, you know, the Republicans have a supermajority in the House, which means basically that Democrats don't even have to show up because they can do whatever they feel like doing without, you know, without the Democrats there to support or not support what they do. So it's that's a horrible lesson for so many South Carolinians to have to, you know, not understand why their government isn't working for them. And, to think that it started in November, it didn't. When I first got elected in 2010 to the South Carolina House, I had to fight the redistricting plan for my district basically as a civilian. Like, I could not get the House Democratic Caucus to support that fight. And I just won in a swing district without a runoff, a 3-way primary, and the general election against the Tea Party candidate out of Kershaw County. And it was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you're not going to fight this plan. And I did my own research to figure out why the Republicans were drawing the lines the way they were and why they were packing swing districts like mine with black voters. One would look at that and say, well, why would you complain about that? Well, I complained because I appreciated the diversity of my district. It shows that, a black woman can represent everybody.
Yeah.
Right. When you first got elected, that was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of Republicans in your district.
Yes.
And I would have maybe even kind of called that a Republican district.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
it
why
used to be very
that
strong
first victory was big, and you've been reelected. So I think that says a lot.
Right. Right.
Says a lot. It's interesting to hear you talk, because back in the day when I was a Republican operative and doing campaigns and things, we used to talk about the Democrat Party. I said, their leadership, they get involved, and it's like they get in a room and they talk about, okay, you want to run for this, this, and this, and who is our candidate going to be? And we were in these Republican primaries that were absolutely brutal, where there would be, 7 or 8 guys, running for, and they would we would tear each other up. And then all of a sudden, no, we have to be left with one candidate, right? Or it usually went to a runoff. So it's one of the things that we used to kind of envy about the Democratic Party here in South Carolina. So it doesn't sound like that's going on anymore. But I do want to ask the senator if you think the party can change and become a little bit more competitive in South Carolina. And it is
that's a difficult question for me to answer. I hope that the party will change, because it's not working and hasn't been. And as part of my announcement, I just reminded everybody that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing year after year, election after election, and losing. And why would you not change? That handwriting has been on the wall for decades, and we have not. Well, the Democrats have not won a statewide office since 2018, I think it was.
It might have been before that.
I think it was Inez.
Yeah, Superintendent of Education was Jim Riggs.
Has there been another one since?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
He was the last one.
If the party recommits itself to the needs of the people, as opposed to, party loyalty and, just a few people in the party, I guess, thriving and
everybody else dying.
and everybody else not, then maybe. But that's going to take, it's going to take time, and it's got to be intentional. It's not going to happen by chance. And I've got some critics who say, oh, well, she should have stayed in the party and tried to fight the good fight from within. And I'm like, well, it's 12 years long enough.
You've been doing that.
Right.
I've been doing that for 12 years now.
So who do you caucus with? Are you caucusing with?
Well, the Senate Democratic Caucus asked if I would continue to caucus with them, and I said yes.
Okay.
So I'm still caucusing with the Senate Democrats. And, I really don't feel as though things are just drastically different, because I've always been different. I've always been independent in my thinking and my actions, which is often put me at odds with members of my own party when I wasn't in the Democratic Party. So, I don't miss that.
Well, it took a lot of courage to do what you did, and to speak up about it and not just walk away and say nothing, but to actually articulate very clearly what the concerns were. And if the party is smart, they will listen.
Yeah.
Because if not, we're going to, as a party, we're going to continue to lose. But beyond that, the people will lose.
Right.
We need at least two vibrant parties so that people understand what the choices are, because any party that has that kind of dominance for a period of time, it's like absolute power. You know the saying, absolute power corrupts. And it really does when there's no challenge to the mainstream or the establishment. So I really, personally, I can honestly say I appreciate what you did, and I hope the party's listening.
Thank you.
I hope the party's listening.
I hope so too. It's it's past time for a change,
Yeah.
or a meaningful change that positively impacts the people of South Carolina. So I hope they're listening.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for your service.
Yeah.
to our
Thank you.
state.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Bring it. Time out, guys. I'm late to dinner. My mom's gonna kill me. Catch you guys later.
Mom wants us home. Okay. Bye, guys. You guys need a ride?
Sure. Yeah. All right. How about some one-on-one? I gotta go eat, man. Sorry. I'll see you later.
Well, that was an interesting interview.
Yeah, it was.
And it is difficult for women in politics, and that I think is something that we see struggle both in the Democrat and Republican parties.
You're right.
But the bottom line is we need more women to run, and we need more women to win.
I agree, and we have to work to make that happen. Listen, I hope that you've enjoyed our show today. That completes our show. The time does fly, doesn't it?
It does.
And we hope that you learned something that both empowers you and inspires you.
Don't forget to like IMARA Woman magazine on Facebook.
And watch Mara Woman online and subscribe to our YouTube channel,
Yes, yes. We need
Mara
more
Woman
subscriptions.
Magazine.
So until the next time, y'all, peace and blessings.